New Yorker, but I've been living in Colombia for the past 8 years. And sometimes when I go back to New York, I get some reverse culture shock. And I wanted to see if I was alone in my feelings. So I went ahead and asked non-New York Redditors, what was one thing about New York that is weird that New Yorkers don't realize is weird? And the answers didn't disappoint. Hi, my name is Rebecca. I was born and raised in New York City by Colombian parents, but I have been living in Medellín since 2018. I'm a tour guide here, so if you are planning a trip to Colombia, or if you are already in Colombia and would like to walk the city streets with me, I have left all of the pertaining information in the description of this video. I also make content on things first generation American and on reflections on life here in Colombia. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can consider subscribing. If you're enjoying my videos and the work that I do on my blog and would like to support, you could go ahead and buy me a coffee. All contributions really do help to get this space growing. So I want to thank you in advance for your support. All right, so let's get started with the first statement made by a non-New York Redditor. The first one reads, dudes selling blank CDs. Yes, this is a classic New York City scam. So what happens is there's a dude in the middle of the street with a stack of CDs. He stops you, you're listening to him, he's trying to sell you an up-and-coming artist. He hands over a CD. You haven't agreed to buying anything yet, but once you touch that CD, you're on the hook for it. Unfortunately, when you get home to play the CD, it turns out it's blank. You have to be very careful in New York with these kinds of people trying to sell you things and have you touch the product. It happens with the Buddhist monks as well. Unfortunately, scams in Medellín are wild as well, and they turn deadly rather quickly. Just last week, they discovered the body of a young American Airlines flight attendant with traces of scopolamine in his body. For those of you who don't know, scopolamine is a drug, also known as devil's breath, that is used to sedate and turn you into some sort of puppet in order to get into your bank accounts and your valuable belongings in the hotel. Authorities are still investigating what happened, but cases like this remind you to be very cautious when traveling. Every place has its own kind of hustle, and if you are not sure about the environment that you are in, you have to be very careful. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. You're paying 3 times my mortgage to live in a closet. That's not weird. That is absurd. I have seen listings of bedrooms in New York that go up to $2,800. I don't know. I guess this is the price that people are willing to pay to be in New York City. I guess New York City has that much to offer people. To each its own. Real estate in Medellín is also the Wild West. There is no formal listing service like MLS. Everything is kind of disconnected, and there is no streamlining of services. It's also really hard to find a realtor that is committed to you and finding you what you need. But once you're able to overcome all of the hurdles of the real estate market here in Medellín, you're able to find a 2-bedroom apartment for $1,500 in a really nice building with all of the amenities like a pool, a sauna, a steam room, a gym, parking, storage unit, and possibly a playground for kids. All right, so let's read the next one. Bodegas. I effing love them so much and miss them whenever I leave New York City. Me too, girl. Me too. I miss bodegas so much. So for those of you who don't know, bodegas are a very small family-run convenience store that sells things like coffee, milk, chips, snacks, and the really good ones have delis where you could buy a bacon, egg, and cheese or get yourself a toasted bagel. In Colombia, we don't have delis. We have a lot of bakeries where you can find all of the famous Colombian bread like buñuelos or pan de bonos, pan de quesos, and the patisseries like pastel de guayaba. There is no real cold cut culture here, so you won't ever hear people craving or wanting a ham and cheese sandwich or anything similar to that. All right, the next one. The subway musicians who are genuinely talented, but everyone just walks by like they're invisible. Saw a dude absolutely shredding violin down there, and people acted like it was elevator music. Also, pizza by the slice at 3 a.m. being completely normal blew my mind. Back home, everything closes at like 9 p.m. So the act of performing publicly for tips is called busking, and it is very popular in New York. And what this person is saying is true. Actually, it's been known that famous celebrities have performed in spaces like Grand Central or Times Square, and people just completely walk by it. The first one that comes to mind is Bad Bunny a couple of years ago with Jimmy Fallon performing at a subway station. People had no idea what was going on until they started to form a crowd around him. And, that's when people discovered it was Bad Bunny. But this happens often in New York. Here in Colombia, the busking is a bit different. There's a lot of performers at the stoplights, but very few musicians around the metro station. Men catcalling women. I couldn't believe how rampant it was in New York City. Oh, if it's bad in New York City, which it is, it's 3 times worse in Colombia. It's horrendous. Some of the looks that you get from guys can be very intimidating, and it's actually one of the things that I really hate about living here in Colombia. It's terrible. All right, so the next one. The fact that New Yorkers think their coffee is drinkable. You need that mud to get the engine going in New York. But yes, I agree. The coffee that you get from the trucks is generally very bad, especially if you get the last servings of that brew. Now, I'm spoiled because I'm in Colombia, and Colombia is obviously known for having great coffee. Now, it is very expensive to drink quality coffee in Colombia. To put things into perspective for you, about 500 grams of coffee could run you $15. Premium Colombian coffee is much cheaper in the United States. I'm not sure how that works, but it's just the way it is. People loudly complaining while they're walking. I listened to this guy pushing a stroller complain about the subway station being closed for the entire walk to the next station. Oh, we complain so much. This is true. We complain because it's cold, we complain because it's hot, we complain because it's raining, we complain because it's sunny, we complain because it's cloudy. I don't know. I didn't realize that until I moved to Colombia. And I guess it's because we're so used to the speed and being efficient and productive at all times that if something doesn't work the way we expect it to and immediately, we get frustrated rather quickly. I would say that the culture in Colombia is not focused so much on productivity. And so things are a little bit more relaxed out here and much more flexible. Having delicious food on every corner. Yeah, effing spoiled over there. Yeah, we are. We are very spoiled. And one of the things that I miss about New York is the food and the great quality and variety of international foods that we have. I think that here in Medellín, we have to step up our game a little bit. If you get a fountain soda to go, they will wrap it up and put it in a bag. Yes, we do this. We don't want the condensation of the cup to get all over us. So great customer service. They do this for us. They also do this with coffee as well. Here in Colombia, you won't ever see people eating on the go, drinking coffee while they're walking the streets. Very unusual to see that. If you do see somebody doing that, that's a good sign. It's a tourist. Okay, UK, stopped to help someone struggling up subway exit stairs with heavy luggage, and my local friends were horrified for my safety. I hate to break it to you, New Yorkers, but it's effing ludicrous to be in a place where the act of helping is treated like a direct request for personal injury. Edit to say, this was around 2005 or a little earlier. It may be very different now. I'm a New York 90s kid. I grew up trusting absolutely no no one, okay? And I brought that trauma over with me to Colombia, and I remember one day I was getting on public transportation with some bags. Somebody had beat me to the seat, and so the person was being kind and offered to hold my things while she was sitting until I got off or until she got off and I could sit in the chair. And I looked at her like she had 5 heads, and I said no, possibly with an attitude. And she gave me the look of death, and everyone around me too. Like, it was taken as me being rude. I've learned my lesson since then, and I think I'm much more open. I'm still very cautious when I'm here, but I think I'm much more open to that kind of hospitality than I was in the past. How complex the subway system is. Every other major city has a simple subway system, which each line labeled by colors or a given name. New York City is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it makes no sense. There are 36 subway lines in New York City, and every New Yorker acts like it is intuitive to navigate the subway system there. It's really not. Here in Colombia, we have 13 lines working on 14. It's pretty easy to navigate the public transportation system here in Colombia. So many New Yorkers insecurely comparing New York City to LA or San Francisco. No one in those two cities worry about comparing their city with New York City. It's often a New York Times thing too. Like, they're all great cities, just different. Medellín too. Medellín is guilty of this. El Colombiano? Oh, Medellín is the best city. How insanely convenient everything is in New York compared to other cities. Being able to walk to everything is insane compared to the rest of the country. The things you can access with a short walk could be a drive or a very long hike everywhere else. Yes, the walkability factor in Medellín is not so great. We're in a valley, so there's a lot of hills around us and things aren't as convenient here. However, we have a great delivery service. They deliver everything here. The delivery service in Colombia is amazing. Weird in a good way. Everyone rides public transportation. It isn't just a thing for poor people. Well, not everyone, but the level at which there's a switch from public to private transportation is much higher in New York than in any other parts of the country. Yes, and might I add, the world. Actually, here in Medellín, I've noticed that public transportation is kind of like a social separator. You won't see people in management or people that are, in a higher socioeconomic level ride the public transportation system here. It's one of the great things about New York. Like, you could really see and get a gist of the city just by riding public transportation. Scaffolding literally everywhere for no apparent reason. Building code and labor laws in New York require buildings to do an inspection of the facade every 5 years. And some buildings are so old that they require maintenance much more often, and a lot of these building owners just prefer to either buy the scaffolding or rent them for long periods of time because they're constantly having to do maintenance. I haven't really seen long-term scaffolding here in Colombia. So many adverts. Yes, everywhere you go, everywhere. The store windows speak to you, the billboards, the lights, you go on the public transportation, and it's just like advertisements everywhere. Here in Colombia, you'll see billboards and advertisements, but it's not as saturated as New York, and I like that. Okay, always speed walking on the streets. My girlfriend is from New York, and I notice it with her too. Even when we go on a leisurely walk, she's Speedy Gonzalez. She gets really annoyed in my home country when we're out walking and other people are too slow for her. For New York City specifically, I really don't get it. Like, okay, sometimes you're in a rush, sure, but everyone all the time half running? Also, the pedestrians crossing on red light very consistently. Like, I'm used to seeing a couple of people doing it on the crosswalk here and there, but in New York City, traffic lights are a suggestion at best. So in Colombia, the traffic lights are also suggestions. That's nothing unusual. I think it's worse here in Colombia. And in terms of the speed walking, yes, people are always asking me if I'm late somewhere because I walk really fast. I can't help it. It's just the way I am. The wealth gap really stands out. Yes, I could see why non-New Yorkers would feel that the wealth gap is really marked in New York because you could walk from a very luxurious building and a couple of blocks down you could see public housing buildings. But I would say that here in Colombia, the gap stands out even more. I think Colombia has to be one of the most unequal countries in Latin America, and we are geographically divided by estratos, okay, which is a number from 1 to 6, 1 being the lowest, 6 being the highest, where the richest people of Colombia live. And you will never see estrato 6 around a estrato 1 neighborhood. It doesn't work like that, which is probably why people will not notice it immediately. But once you're here for a bit of a time, you will start to notice the contrasts and all of the factors of inequality in the country. The idea that if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere became very funny to me after I moved to a teeny tiny town in the middle of nowhere, 2 hours to the nearest community hospital. Everyone in this town had actual survival skills. Like, they grow their own food and guide their cattle around on horses and build their homes themselves. I'd say if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. In New York City, you have all of the resources and conveniences and opportunities in the world. So this is a former New Yorker. New York teaches you how to survive in the city, but surviving in nature, if you're from New York, you're toast, man. I know. Rats just cavorting about in stairwells and such. I'm from Portland and we also have rats, but I've never seen rats in a group going ham in a basement stairwell by sidewalks like I saw in New York City with people nearby. Portland rats are more shy so far. Yes. The rats in New York. You will not see rats in Medellín. Medellín is an extremely clean city. And the last one. I've been there a few times for a few days each time. I was surprised at how segregated groups were. Yes, there were many ethnicities represented, but I remember noticing that groups were generally homogenous. And finally, yes, I totally agree that I was not there long enough to form a proper opinion. No, Bow Wow Chica Chica, you made an absolute great observation of New York City. I struggle with that every time I go there. It's one of the things that I don't miss, and probably one of the things that I enjoy the most about living in Colombia. This kind of segregation does not exist. Not saying that there aren't any limiting segregation factors out here, it's just not based on how I look. And with that one, I am signing off. I really enjoyed reading these comments from Redditors about what makes New York weird. I agree with all of them. Perhaps in the future I'll make another video, a part 2, because there were some other interesting things that were mentioned in the subreddit. But for now, that's all I have, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!